the best way to start improving the function of the mind is actually to dial in our physical health first, starting with metabolic health, coming off sugars and ultra-processed foods, because of course, the quickest way to sometimes change the mind is to change the body. The thing that most adults need to do once they've dialed in their physical health, and they're working out, they're sleeping well consistently most of the time, their energy's pretty good, etc. The most important thing adults can do to advance and go to the next level, 3.0, is to ask themselves,
Mark, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Siim, and looking forward to our discussions.
Yeah, I'm also excited to have you. And we're going to have a very nice discussion about how your physical health and mental health are so intertwined and you can't really have one without the other. And for, like optimal health, you really need to have your mental health and physical health both in check. So, you're kind of one of the best experts to discuss this with. And we'll have a good discussion. Maybe we can start with you giving a short backstory about
Sure.
who you are and how did you get into health?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I'm one of the luckiest people alive because I get to teach about health all the time, and it is such a profound and important subject that I took a deep interest in just when I took the decision to become a medical doctor. I saw the health challenges of the people around me and really figured out I do not want to go down that route, and became deeply interested in health when I was a teenager. Particularly got into meditation. So very early on, started to really understand how important it was that my mind was trained. Really took an interest in nutrition. Went to med school. Of course, learned nothing about those things in med school, and about halfway through my med school, I went to St. Mary's in Paddington, London. Whilst I was loving it, I came to the conclusion that if I really want to learn about health, I need to look outside of allopathic medicine to see what other systems are teaching about health. And so I actually studied about Ayurvedic medicine, Tibetan medicine, traditional Chinese medicine to better understand a more holistic understanding of what health is about. So when I was at med school, it was pretty inevitable at some stage I would move beyond allopathic medicine. And so after a couple of years of graduating, I started working as an integrative medicine doctor here in the UK. And I've been doing that for about 20 years. I was one of the original co-founders of Europe's first professional training program in integrated medicine for healthcare professionals. And particularly early back in the day, I was doing a lot of media focused work. So I was on TV talking about the holistic approach to health. And my first book was The Mind Body Bible. And it really deep dive into, listen, we have a mind. Most people's mind works against us and not for us. Same for our body. What is the connection between the two? And how can we take care of both in balance so that they are aligned and that they allow us to live a deeply fulfilling life? So that's my kind of background. And then thereafter, I really went down the personal development route. I had my own mental health struggles that had a profound shaping influence on my understanding of what mental health is. And really, to understand it, you have to go into emotional health and relational health. And then I had a whole bunch of time alongside Dave Asprey, working with him at Bulletproof. So really got to understand the biohacking world. So I've really emerged from that with a big picture, integral understanding of optimal health. I've got a framework, and my thing now is just to tell the world about it to anyone who's interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, so you have like a Doctor Strange story that you were a doctor and then you traveled to the Eastern philosophy and Eastern medicine side and emerged as a kind of a practitioner of both sides of the
Oh,
world.
yes. Yeah. My first deep dive was actually into energy medicine and sensing and working with the subtle energies of the body. And And when you train your nervous system to kind of perceive them, then they become apparent. And then you realize that a core aspect of health is the continuous flow of life force energy through your system. And that needs
Mm,
to happen on multiple levels, the metabolic, biological level, but also your psychological level and also the life force level. So, yeah, a lot of what I teach is kind of grounded in my personal experience and just my deep exploration of really what health is all about.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, like the metabolism, it's essentially like just energy production, and
Yeah, right.
without metabolism, then yeah, you're not alive.
It's all over.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have like a more like a meta level question, which is maybe like a good introduction to our discussion. So like you mentioned, yeah, like the body mind connection, and this is obviously one of the oldest questions that philosophers and everyone has been thinking about. Like, what is the mind and how does it relate to the body? It's like this
Yes.
Cartesian dualism. Like, are the body and mind separate, or are
Yes.
they connected? So, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah. Well, this is something that I've been teaching on and exploring for 20 years. So, do you have a perspective on it? And really, they are aspects of a whole
Mm,
system, right? And so, I sometimes think it's better to talk about the mind body system, right? But they have different functions. So, the body is really the externalized aspect of the mind that provides a vehicle for us to explore and navigate life here on planet Earth. The mind is the mechanism that allows us to experience, make decisions, respond to challenges here on planet Earth. So
mm,
there's one whole system that has multiple functions, but they work as a coherent whole. And where we want to get to is that the challenge for most people is they don't know how to use their mind skillfully nor develop it, right? But what you come to appreciate, and you'll know this, of course, is that the best way to start improving the function of the mind is actually to dial in our physical health first, starting with metabolic health, coming off sugars and ultra processed foods. Because, of course, the quickest way to sometimes change the mind is to change the body. And then
mm.
when the body and physical health function changes, so the mind and our inner experience, our mood also shifts as well. So we want to be working with both dimensions simultaneously.
I want to take a quick break to let you know about my favorite wellness devices, which are the Bond Charge red light therapy devices. You've probably seen many of your favorite longevity influencers using these red light therapy devices, but do they actually work? Yes, they do. Red light therapy has been shown to have many benefits on skin anti-aging, hormone optimization, pain management, and even exercise performance. I use my device every day for 15 minutes, especially during the winter months when there's not much sunlight. It increases my energy in the morning and makes my skin glow. Just check out the testimonials on the Bond Charge website for the before and after pictures of other people. Most radiotherapy devices don't have the right wavelengths of light, which might mean you're not getting the claimed benefits. Bond Charge uses the exact wavelengths of light used in research, and they also have near-infrared light that's beneficial to the joints. Head over to bondcharge.com and use the code SIIM, S-I-I-M, for a 15% discount. I think the best example is that if someone is super stressed, or yeah, like there's something in the nervous system that is keeping them in this sympathetic state where they're like this fight or flight and stressed out, then everyone kind of retrospectively says that I don't know what took over me. I was like very explosive or impulsive. I was angry towards my family or friends. But it's, yeah, like you're in this sympathetic state that is then controlling your mind or directing your behavior in some way. And if you get out of that when you're like relaxed, then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
something else, or you return to being like quote unquote normal. But yeah, it was just
Yes.
your
Yeah.
nervous system actually dictated your view or perception of the world and how you behaved.
It did. And this is a really important point because most people's sense of self is a reflection of a highly stressed state of consciousness that actually gives rise to the experience of them being a very thought based, separate sense of self. Whereas actually, once your nervous system is regulated and calm and balanced, and you access what we would call a state of presence, so it means actually your psychological center of gravity is in your lower belly. And anyone who does martial arts knows that's where you want to be grounded because that's your natural center of gravity. then the mind becomes still, you become naturally more present and attuned, and you have a deeper sense that this is more me
Mm,
versus the kind of somewhat stressed, distracted, neurotic self. And most adults live in a hyper stress, hyperactivated state most of the time. There's kind of, we call it surviving, not thriving. And really, the work I've done with now thousands of people over the years, both patients and both kind of students who come through my training programs, is teaching them that really beyond the kind of thought based sense of self, who's highly distracted and often filled full of problems and worries, is a deeper sense of self that feels intrinsically connected and whole and present and appreciative. And that so many of the qualities we're trying to get in life, inner peace, well being, joy, love, and connection, are qualities of this. We call it the deep self. And so, an integral part of the journey of health is learning how to access this both as a resource, but also as a source of wisdom. And
mm,
so the whole model I built out is really fundamentally grounded in what I call fundamental well being, where regardless of your situation, you're able to access a sense of inner peace and ease and resourcefulness in order to better respond to what's going in your life at that time. So that's the kind of big picture model, and you really need to be working with all these dimensions. The problem is most people don't know how to do it.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, when we describe what is like our true self or deep self, then it's never, yeah, like the flight or flight and the stressed
Right.
out self or the neurotic or the kind of angry self that is controlled by this more like the primal instincts and yeah, like some sort of a distress. Like if you ever like ask, okay, describe yourself, what's your true self, then it's always like this in the parasympathetic kind of
Yeah,
when you're
right.
more relaxed and when you feel like your true self. And yeah, when you're imbalanced in the sympathetic state, then you're like something is taking over my true self, and
Exactly.
I'm in this distressed ego state or
That's right.
yeah, defensive state. So yeah,
Yeah.
getting access to this parasympathetic true self is when you actually be able to live the most fulfilling and meaningful life for you and for your goals, whatever they are.
Yes. And the most important hack to do that is to cue internal safety. So in 2016, a new theory of stress emerged that really has kind of helped evolve and refine their understanding of stress. And what is now believed is that actually stress is our default state because it has a survival advantage. It keeps us very alert to changes in our environments. And so that's our default state. And that kind of makes sense. Most people are stressed most of the time. But what turns the stress signals off? It's the internal experience of safety. And
Mm,
so there's some, and we can touch on this, how to create that. When our nervous system neurocepts safety, it activates the ventral vagal branch of the parasympathetic nervous system, and it moves us into what would be called grounded, attuned presence, in which we feel connected to ourselves and to life and to the people in front of us. But we have to know how to bring internal safety. And there's a couple of mind hacks for doing that.
mm. So yeah, like how do people then get out of this constant stress state for them to like start unlocking their potential and start getting like healthy?
That's it. So, the way I teach it is we want to get into the habit of welcoming internally whatever shows up. And what that means is you and I, we are the custodians of our inner experience. When we are awake, we have an inner experience. There's always emotions there, there's bodily sensations, there's stuff going on. When we habitually welcome that, we welcome the actuality of its presence, that actually signals the presence of safety to our nervous system. And there's two ways of doing it. And this is really one of the first things that I learned way back, which is when you have an uncomfortable emotion inside of you, whether it's stress, agitation, fear, whatever it may be, the first thing you do is in the moment of noticing it, You say to it silently 3 times, welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, anyone listening to this, if they tried that now, what they would notice is when they see those 3 words, they will shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. They will naturally breathe more fully and deeply, and they'll experience a greater sense of calm despite the presence of the agitation or fear. So that's kind of like level one. So get into the habit of welcoming whatever shows up. And the reason we do that is, as adults, we kind of emerge into adulthood with a very constricted bandwidth of allowable emotional experience. Some of us will only do stress and anxiety and worry, right? They're really good at doing anxiety, but they haven't yet opened up their experience to joy or gratitude or love. Others, well, they're full of positivity and joy, but they haven't opened their bandwidth up to grief or anger or shame. And where we want to get to, if self actualization is important to us, fulfilling our lived potential, is to open up the bandwidth of allowable experience to welcome all unconditionally. Doesn't mean we want it to be there, doesn't mean we like it. It's just what's required in order to evolve as a human being. It has to be in the presence of neurological safety. So that's the
Mm.
practice of inner welcoming. And the easiest way to continue that practice throughout the day, and again, your listeners can do this as I'm sharing this, is to have an inner smile. Okay.
Mhm.
And again, this was a Taoist practice that was taught to me. And it goes like this: you allow your eyes to be soft. So you got soft eyes. We know that when we soften our visual gaze, it activates the body's relaxation system. Then the next step is you allow your tongue to be soft. If you have your mouth open slightly, tongue soft, what it does, it stops subvocalization, which is internal mental chatter. Then, soft eyes, soft tongue, you center yourself in the center of your heart and you allow an inner smile to expand from there, even if you don't feel like smiling. It's a trainable skill. And what can happen just normally after a couple of days of doing this is you can instantly access an inner smile and you will get a sense of it filling you. Because that's how we know when we're being welcomed by another human being. They smile at us, right? And it's sincere and it's kind of natural and it's genuine. When we bring the same to our own inner experience, that shifts us out of stress, it shifts us into connection. And from there, we are so much more embodied and present. So, my first teaching is always be welcoming to your internal experience. See, a lot of people are fighting their experience, um, dishing their experience. So they've got strong inner critic. They're criticizing their experience. I want it to be this. I don't want it to be this. They're in this constant state of resistance to what is. When you shift into non resistance and welcome it, it changes everything.
Mm. Yeah, like not being distraught by it, but just observing and accepting it.
Yeah, you welcome it. Yeah.
Mm.
And here's the thing, a lot of our psychological suffering is from resisting the fact it's there. Well, the reality is it is there, right? So you might as well turn towards it, acknowledge it, and welcome it. And then from that welcoming place, then you do a process of inquiry.
Mm.
What, if anything, do I need to do to take care of myself? Right. And then that's when we kind of go into more root cause based healthcare, right? So it's like, I'm habitually anxious all the time. So I turn towards it, I bring safety to it. What, if anything, do I need to take care of myself? You see, anxiety is just the felt experience of the body's alarm going off, right?
Mm.
That's all it is. It's just the alarm going off. It's a feedback system. You know, symptoms are not the problem, they're the feedback of the system. And so then we do an inquiry. And for some people with anxiety, they're super anxious because there's trauma sitting in their nervous system that needs to be processed and deactivated. Others, they're super anxious because the thyroid hormones are too high, or they're
Mm,
overcaffeinated, right? Or they're overwhelmed and stressed by, the number of things on the plate. So you turn towards, you face it, you welcome it, and then you inquire, what do I need to do to take care of myself? If I do not have the answers, I find someone that I trust to support me with that.
mm. What if someone is like, these things require a certain level of this self-awareness
Correct.
in the moment, and usually if you are in that more stressed out state, then it's hard to find that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Are there any like direct ways to like stimulate the vagus nerve, or some ways to make a parasympathetic shift, uh, like
Yeah.
more physically, like without the mental technique?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just to soften your gaze and tune into the spaciousness all around you. So, what happens when we're in a stress state, we go into a locked in, zoomed in state.
Mm.
We go into what's called the portrait mode. And
Mhm.
people notice that next time you're stressed, notice what's happened to your gaze, and you'll be zoomed in, locked in, either on something in front of you or a thought or the story in your head. And then the moment you see that, kind of smile on the inside, soften your gaze, and without thinking, notice your periphery in your gaze.
Mm.
And then what will happen is you'll breathe naturally more deeply and you've shifted state. So that really is really straightforward. The other one is there's fantastic breath work techniques. The one that I've been teaching for such a long time is 4-7 breathing. So we know when we prolong the expiration, it activates the relaxation response. So it looks like this. Okay, I'm stressed out. I'm feeling disconnected. I breathe into the count of 4, preferably through the nose, but it doesn't matter too much. But out to the count of 7, so prolonged expiration. And I repeat that a couple of times. And again, that will just shift you into a more balanced, relaxed kind of present state.
Mm.
So our breath and our visual system are the immediately applicable ways to shift our state. And of course, there's loads of others like relaxing your posture, looking up slightly. Normally, when we're very stressed, we tend to look down. Even if you just kind of naturally tilt your head upwards a little bit, or even look up to the ceiling, it can really shift your perspective and your mood. So there's all these kind of, so that's why we kind of say the direct way to change the mind is through the body, because the body is the externalized expression of the mind. So it kind of, when you understand that, it all kind of makes sense.
Mm. Right. What about like less of these acute stressors? So there's obviously things like more chronic, low grade stressors like gut problems, some autoimmune response, house mold, environmental things, nutrient deficiencies. Like all those things can also,
Yeah,
let's say, keep you in a like this a subconsciously stressed out state, and prevent you from enjoying life to the fullest. So
that's it.
how do you go about like addressing that,
Yeah,
or as a doctor, like, okay, what kind of diagnostics, or let's say some
yeah,
person comes into your practice and they have those kind of low grade potential issues, how do you go about solving them?
yeah. Well, firstly, I think it's fantastic when anyone shows up and is willing to get some help and perspective on what to do, because the golden rule is wherever possible, don't do it by yourself.
Mhm.
Because we all have our blind spots and we don't have the knowledge and stuff. So that's kind of one of the blessings of integrative healthcare, functional medicine. So ideally find someone that you like and respect who has that training and that kind of functional root cause kind of model. It really starts with, comprehensive inquiry, consultation, assessment, a whole system assessment. So systematically going through the different biological systems, getting a sense, of course, where the greatest imbalances are, but also appreciating there's really a hierarchy of importance. And it tends to be for most people, nutrition and gut is where you start. And
Mm,
you just systematically start going through the systems, starting with nutrition and gut, to kind of clean them up. And way back in the day, like 20 years ago, I used to work with a lot of people with depression, anxiety, and the first thing I would do is just bring them off added sugars,
mm,
right? And
yeah.
would have to hydrate them and prepare them for the challenge of the first couple of days. But so many people felt so much better, right, when they weren't on added sugars and cakes and cookies and all that kind of awful stuff. Just like, oh my gosh, I feel like a completely different human being. Right, because you just reduce inflammation in your body, your blood sugar's not all over the place anymore. So sometimes
Mm,
it can be very simple interventions make a difference, but sometimes, of course, it's not simple, right?
mm,
And then you got to do, a whole bunch of bloods to ascertain and see what the inflammatory markers are, the lipoproteins, look at the hormones. Um, but sometimes it depends on the people's budget,
mm,
right? So,
yeah.
these things can be pretty affordable. So it depends on, and also it depends on how committed they are to implementing the necessary changes, how motivated they are. One of the reasons I love working with the kind of biohacking group as an audience itself is great for me because they're super motivated, right?
Mhm,
They're curious, they're kind of up for it, they're engaged. That's fantastic. So it's a systematic approach through the biological systems while simultaneously, is this person stuck in a stress state?
mm,
And what can we do to just give them some foundational practices to start addressing this stress at the same time? Because we know someone's stress is going to put their sleep out of whack. They're much more likely to self-medicate with sugar and alcohol and distraction, all that kind of stuff. So that's why mind and body in parallel is kind of real key.
mm. Yeah, I would imagine like things like inflammatory markers and maybe blood sugar markers and thyroid markers are like the biggest ones that affect your mood and like mental well-being. Other like anything else that you think would be most
Yeah,
relevant?
kind of B12,
Mm,
vitamin D, and obviously kind of really important. But I would say for a lot of people with kind of mental health issues, it's the hormones that are
mm,
really kind of key to have a good understanding of. Um, and of course, particularly in females, if the iron levels are low, that's going to have a profound influence both on their energy and the mood as well. So that is why in my books at least, we should all be doing a comprehensive panel of bloods probably once a year. And if there's any significant health issues there, then twice a year. The challenge for most people is if they go to their general practitioner, the primary healthcare practitioner, and they do a limited panel of bloods, and then they come back and they do the worst thing, which is if they say, there's nothing wrong with you
mm,
because the
mhm,
bloods are fine. And of course, as you know, it's like, well, hold it a sec. You're looking at through the filter of normal versus optimal. And two is that's just a snapshot in time of a very restricted panel. What about the things you didn't test for, right? So the beauty of functional medicine is it's a commitment to getting to the heart of what the core drivers are. But typically when you reduce inflammation, you clean up the diet, you dial in the sleep, of course you start exercising consciously, you balance the hormones, you restore good gut health, then fortunately for us, the body tends to kind of start taking care of itself, particularly if we're dealing with stress. And particularly if we start building in more joy and happiness into
mm,
our life, right? So we know that happy, fulfilled people tend to naturally take better care of their body, right? And they fill their kind of body full of positive hormones and neurotransmitters. And so it's very important, particularly if anyone's listening to this and they tend to over focus on the physical, to balance it up with We always want to be working on our happiness, our joy, our
Mm.
relationships, the our fulfillment, because they're equally important.
Yeah, it's like often, especially like people who are super motivated and super enthusiastic about their health, they might, yeah, like focus only on the physical health, that I need to do these, interventions and exercises,
Right.
etc. But they don't really, let's say, or like, sometimes like their relationships or their mental health can suffer. Like they might grind through
Right.
just the physical, like the workouts and those things. But yeah, like ideally, the actual health is when you have both things in balanced. It's not like being super
Yes.
fit and super physically healthy and having poor mental health and poor relationships.
Right.
It's having both kind
You
of
want it
equal
all.
equally elevated, and like vice versa. You can, if you have a perfect mental health and perfect mood and family relationships, etc., but your physical health is kind of bad. You're overweight and diabetic.
Exactly.
Then it's not the perfect either. So you need to have both elevated
Yeah.
to be optimally healthy, holistically.
Yeah, agreed. And you've just kind of nicely described what I call biohacking 2.0 and 3.0. 2.0 really is a focus on the body and brain. It's mainly physical and cognitive health orientated. That's where most people start because, in a way, it's a bit easier because it's all externalized and you're looking at, what can I take to help myself? What tech can I use to help myself? And that really is, I see, the foundations of health. But then what are you going to do with that energy, and that vitality? And that's where 3.0 is, because now it's saying, well, equally important is learning how to upgrade the operating system of your mind so you can use your mind more skillfully, work with your emotions more intelligently and consciously, because you can only be conscious in relationships if you have a healthy relationship to your own emotions, because emotions are the bridge to
Mm,
in relationships. And so what I see for a lot of people is that they can over focus on the body at the expense of their emotional, relational, and mental health, right? But you also make a good point. You can have some very conscious, mature, enlightened beings who are spiritually aware and all that kind of stuff, but they got pre-diabetes, right? They're kind of metabolically unhealthy and the waistline is too much and the blood pressure is up. So they're equally imbalanced, right?
mm,
Because they undervalued the body, right? And so we want to equally value the body and mind because the two aspects of the whole. We want to be simultaneously working with it. And to be honest with you, the most important, I believe, the thing that most adults need to do once they've dialed in their physical health and they're working out, they're sleeping well consistently most of the time, their energy's pretty good, etc. The most important thing adults can do to advance and go to the next level, 3.0, is to ask themselves, where are my challenges and struggles? What am I not facing? And then when you acknowledge, and you've got to be honest about it, where your difficulty is. And for a lot of people, it tends to be around addictions and compulsions or certain behaviors that crop up in relationships, right? That's where the work is, right? And there's a beautiful phrase that says, whatever is in the way is the way. And
mm,
so it requires us to get humble and honest with ourselves, to get the necessary help and support to navigate our greatest challenges. And it's easy to do. You just look around the dimensions of your life and you say, where am I out of integrity? Where am I struggling? What is not going well? What part of my behavior is limiting or dysfunctional or unhealthy, right?
mm,
And that is where you want to deploy the energy and the focus you've got from looking after your body to work through that, typically with the help of a guide, support, mentor, therapist, whatever it might be. And then when you start working through what I call your shadow, all the parts of your behavior in your life that you kind of don't want to acknowledge and speak about, that's when you start to mature and develop and transform as a human being. And that takes you into the realm of biohacking 3.0. And when you're there, then there's a lot more depth. You're kind of as interested in your emotional world, your relational world, and the transpersonal dimensions of life. as you are the physical, but they're held in balance.
Hmm. Yeah. I often feel that if people are like solely focused on like the physical health side of things, then it's often because they're afraid of not being this optimal. There are a lot of like diets tend to have that like I need to eat this perfect diet according to
Right.
my diet principles, and I can't never like fall off the wagon or do something else because of usually it's because of fear of some scarcity or some yeah, like fear of like whatever nutrient or whatever food
Right.
ingredient that may be. But in some
Yeah.
cases, the best thing for your mental health as well is to not care about the optimal diet and to
Yes.
you know eat like the birthday cake or whatever the case may be.
That's
To
right.
because it's usually like a fear of that if I fall off the wagon, then I'm not able to fall back. I'm not able to go back on the right track, and therefore it's like this scarcity mindset. I need to be on this perfect health routine all the time because
Yeah.
if I accidentally fall off it, then I'll like
Mm.
not get back on it and not
Hmm.
get my health right on the
That's
right track.
exactly
So
right.
it's kind of the scarcity mindset. Whereas if you are confident in your ability to go back on the right track,
Yeah.
having the right like discipline and self control, even if you fall off the wagon every once in a
Yep.
while or deliberately go off the wagon, then it's more of like yeah mature and
Mm.
uh, abundant mindset that
Yeah.
that you can do it and then you'll be able to go back on the right track.
Got it. And one of the hallmarks of a functional, healthy mind is that it's self reflective and it's flexible and adaptable,
Mm,
right? So there's nuance,
right.
which is there are situations in which I'm going to not obsess and worry about my diet because, a couple of days from now, I'll get back on track. That's not a problem. It doesn't
Yeah.
cause me undue stress around it. When the mind tips into rigidity and control, that is actually feedback from the mind that is actually operating dysfunctionally, right? So we are supposed to have a flexible, adaptable mind grounded in our guiding principles and our values, and we kind of live from there. And the real question is my extra obsession around the body and the diet, um, is it detracting from the equally important other dimensions of health, right? Um, and if someone lives in their head all the time and places their body and their diet at the center of their universe, that's just feedback that because what should be at the center of our universe is the whole of life. It's the whole of life experience. We want life at the center, not our body. And others, they have the mind at the center, right? So they all they do is they're very intellectual and everything is about their thinking and the stories they create around it. We're like, no, you want life at the center of your life. Okay.
Mm,
It's the whole. And the key for us is, where am I out of integrity? Where am I out of imbalance? What am I not facing? And when I look at the whole of my life, where am I not thriving and flourishing? Right. So physically, I may be performing really well, fantastic, but I can always guarantee there's going to be other aspects of your life you ain't thriving, my friend. And it could be in your relationships, it could be in your fulfillment, it could be in your financials. And what we want to get to a place is with time, and it does take time, it takes patience, is that you get to a place where the majority of the aspects of who you are and your life are in harmony. And the way you know they're in harmony is because majority of the time there's an inner sense of well-being and ease and a sense of flow and connection and wholeness. And that is just feedback. You've been through this process of cleaning up. What you're doing is you're cleaning up the consequences of past experiences and past decisions. And so when you look at the whole of your life, it's in a good place. And that's kind of where we want to get to. And then it's kind of maintenance. We're still continuing to grow and learn. And most biohackers, for sure, and health optimizers, what's great about them is they have a curious mindset, right? They just want to learn. And that being keeping close to curiosity and learning is great. But we want to be equally living. We want to be living life in alignment with our inner purpose. And we all have a unique purpose,
Mm.
right? And normally it's built on the whole of our life's experience. Is like, how can we uniquely show up in a way that's authentic and kind of serve the web of life, right? We're all connected. And our job is to work through our stuff, to clean out the conditioning and the distortions so that we can show up in integrity, having taken good care of ourselves, to be a positive presence in the world, whatever that looks like.
Mm. Gotcha. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Uh, One thing also like causes a lot of, I guess, fear and anxiety for people is getting bad results in their like blood work or tests. So, how would you how can people, yeah, like approach this? Like they get like some blood test. It's, usually it's not even like something super serious. They don't get diagnosed with a particular disease, but even then, like they might be something is off the ranges, and a lot of people might be, I guess, worried about that. So, what's like a good mental model to like approach that kind of a situation?
Yeah, well, you can approach it cognitively, which is to reframe it, but that doesn't tend to kind of work so much, right? Because our emotional reality trumps our best thinking. So, what tends to happen when people get particularly anxious or tense around the result, I think the first thing is um, to ideally partner with someone, whether it's a functional trained practitioner, whatever, who can contextualize the result. And as sometimes the blood test results we get are a function of the time of day, right? And if there's a parameter that's significantly off that's unexpected, first thing you want to do is probably retest it,
Mm.
right? So that's the thing. Is it accurate? Is it true? Was it a finger pin prick test? Was it a venous kind of sample test? So there's all these different things. So there's the accuracy of the testing. And then it's having someone alongside of you who can contextualize it, and then come up with a strategy to actually, okay, given this, how does this fit into the big picture of what you're struggling with and your symptoms? What information is giving this, and what will our next practical step be? The challenge for a lot of people is when they're trying to figure it out themselves, right? And it's very easy when we're stressed. Well, it's really hard when you're stressed to think clearly and have perspective. So that is why I believe we all need mentors, coaches, therapists, practitioners, basically a team of people around us, because we're not designed to figure out life in isolation. We need each other. So I think for a lot of people is like you got to consciously build out your team to support you. So it's not your problem, it's the team's issue to figure out, and it just takes the pressure off us.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I guess it's, yeah, important to realize that tests can be, sometimes false positives, or like more like, yeah, they fluctuate quite a lot, especially
Oh,
blood
definitely.
blood markers. So even though you might have something off the range, then it doesn't mean that something is kind of, immediately wrong. And I guess then it highlights the importance of like more frequent testing, uh,
Yes, that's
to
right.
because of the fluctuation. So, if, yeah, some single marker or a few markers are off, then just test them again in a few weeks, and might be already like improved and the better.
Exactly.
Mm.
And I think there's also when people self interpret blood tests, what I see is because they're not necessarily trained in their interpretation, they can miss the really important information because they're kind of pulled up into some parameter that is not so kind of relevant, right? So I had a case recently of someone was asking for perspective and advice on interpreting the bloods. They'd gone through like a longevity blood panel, like, more testing than I've seen in many, many years. And the longevity doctor had gone through it manually, highlighted this and that, and it was just a disaster to read. I mean, it was just so confusing, and the conclusions that came out of it, I thought, oh my gosh, how did they come to that conclusion? What I see is completely different. The thing
Mm.
that jumped out for this person was their lipoprotein A is really high. So they're at a significantly high risk of a cardiovascular event. And that wasn't even flagged up,
Mm.
right? And then turns out his brother, his father, all had significant cardiac events early on in life. Right. So they were pursuing these vague parameters, kind of correlates of growth hormone, and we're looking at potential growth hormone injections every day. And that was the path it was going.
Wow.
I look and said, my friend is like, this is all about your heart,
Mm,
right? We've got to check out the other lipoproteins here because that's where the focus should be,
mhm,
right? And that the growth hormone, they did IGF-1, that can fluctuate. You're still within the normal range for your age. So if that was something you really want to pursue, well, we need to repeat it again because it can just fluctuate according to the time of day. So it's sometimes very easy, and some practitioners are guilty of perpetuating this, of pursuing the wrong thing or decontextualizing the information. So you go down a blind alleyway, and we don't want to be doing that.
yeah. Yeah, depends, yeah, like, what the goals are. Like, if your goal is, like, body composition or, like, some quality of life or energy levels, then, yeah, maybe growth hormone is something to focus on, but, yeah, like, the bigger fish to fry is obviously hard
Bigger
to eat
fish.
for
Yeah.
your actual longevity, so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A phrase that I picked up from Dave because we hung out so much was he uses the word kryptonite. He kind of says, "What's your kryptonite? What are the things happening within you and around you that are undermining your health? What are the big rocks?"
Mm,
Right, and sometimes we can dive into the minutiae and miss the big rocks that are in front of us. So my kind of philosophy is like figure out what the big rocks are first, address the big rocks, and guess what? The minutiae, more often than not, will take care of itself.
mm, yeah. Uh, you mentioned, biohacking 3.0, so, like,
Yeah.
incorporating, like, the whole of the body and the mind. So, you also have, like, a webinar about, this kind of a concept, so maybe you can
Yeah,
share
that's
share
right.
that.
Yeah, no, of course. So, really, this is, I guess, the emergence and consolidation of my lifetime's work to date on what is required to be a healthy, high functioning, fulfilled human being. Um, and so it emerges from my deep dive into integrated medicine, functional medicine, biohacking, and human development. So I tend to see things through a human development kind of framework. So we've put together this webinar at the School of Biohacking that I'm co-founder of. It's called Thrive Essentials, free to access, where I'm presenting this biohacking 3.0 model and talking through what I call the 5 pillars of human thriving. So we've got the kind of biohacking 2.0, which looks after self care and self optimization. Then the 3.0 is the other 3 pillars, which is focused on self mastery, self actualization, and self transcendence. So I'm mapping out the pillars. Then I'm kind of giving what I would call just the essentials that every human being needs to know about how to improve the function of your body, mind, and emotions. It's just, if I had one wish, it would be every human being on the planet would see this free masterclass because it just gives you the foundations. And then after that, we had then have Thrive Unlimited, which is a guided 35-day protocol that I guide people through where we deep dive into each of these 5 pillars as a whole. And then after that, we have the world's first biohacking instructor training program, which I'm super, super excited about. So it's for biohacking enthusiasts who want to deep dive into biohacking, but as importantly, come out of it with a way for them to monetize their passion for biohacking. Because I'm going to be teaching how to create personalized programs for clients around 9 specific outcomes and domains that I believe biohackers are particularly uniquely suited to look at. So that's the school of biohacking.
Mm. Yeah, so, like, instructor program, not obviously, you'll learn about your own health as well, but it's more
Oh,
about
yes.
teaching others and becoming instructor.
Yeah, right. And staying out of the terrain of functional medicine and doctoring, that's their terrain. This is very clear boundaries. It's like you're going to learn how to create personalized programs around energy, sleep optimization, cognitive performance, your expertise, healthy longevity. You're going to be a contributor, which is fantastic. Consciousness hacking, body composition. So it's for me, I feel it's the sweet spot for biohackers. So we're going to, and the key for biohacking, as you know, is about personalization. There's core guiding principles that apply to the majority, but then it's got to be personalized.
Mm. What are some of, like, the core pillars or the like fundamentals
Mhm.
of this thriving as a human being? Like, we don't have to go into like all the details, but like,
Sure.
is it like relationships? Is it sleep? Or is it nutrition?
Yeah, I would say it really starts with self care. And self care, in my experience, tends to be missed by some biohackers. They jump into optimization before the foundation self. And self care is meeting the physical and psychological needs of your mind body system in balance every day.
Mm,
Okay. So that's just kind of simple things that, of course, good nutrition and sleep and movement and exercise, all the usual stuff, supplementation, of course, all of that. But then it's also things like personal hygiene, dental hygiene, visiting the dentist, kind of health screening, that kind of stuff. But then equally important is our psychological needs, right? So there are certain needs we all need in order to be happy, healthy, and not so stressed. And so they are the needs for positive attention, privacy. We need to be able to step away from the busyness of life and reflect on where we're at. We need meaning and significance and purpose. So it means that when we look to the week ahead, if there is no sense of excitement and meaning about it, we have to make that happen, right? And we need community and connection. We need significance. We need to be stretched and challenged. So it's really kind of grounded in self care. We really want those in place. And then on top of that, then we do the optimization piece, which is how do we now dial it in so that we can really optimize the function of our body and brain system, right? And so that can be, more advanced nutritional supplementation. That can be bringing technologies to bring in efficiencies into our optimization process. So those are the foundations. But the real key, and I feel where most biohackers will appreciate it most, is learning how to skillfully work with your nervous system and mind and emotions. When
mm,
you dial that in, and you don't have to be meditating a lot every day, but it's more about using it throughout the day, that's the game changer. Um, and then we deep dive into self transcendence. So I'm going to be sharing the work of the Center for the Study of Non Symbolic Consciousness, who pioneered the work on fundamental well being, which is how we can, through our internal mind training process, access our deeper nature beyond the everyday mental based sense of self, which innate to it has the well being and wholeness we seek. And there's some incredible techniques and hacks for accessing that. So we covered that as well. And then there's self actualization, which is working through our shadow, all the things that we're not yet attending to about ourselves and our life, because built into the shadow are gifts. And when those gifts are reclaimed, they become available to us so that we can do our best work in the world. So that's the kind of guiding
mm.
principles of it.
Yeah. And what is there any like if you had to choose like one single thing to do
Mm.
to
Mhm.
achieve that, what would it be?
I think it would be a couple of things. Mindset would be really important. And I think the first thing is to have a sincere desire to know the truth.
Mm,
And that means the truth of what is true. What is true about who I am as a human being? What is true about what's going inside my body? What is true about how I'm being out of integrity? What is true about the help that I need in order to progress as a human being? So I think staying close to that is like keeping curious and what is true. And the challenge for people moving from 2.0 to 3.0, 2.0 requires a lot of control, right? So really 2.0 is I'm taking personal responsibility for my health, my well-being, and my life. Awesome. That's fantastic. But some people can use way too much control. So they're grasping, they're efforting, they do it in a very tense way. In order to move to 3.0, we have to shift gears. We have to soften and move into active surrender. And active surrender is I'm willing to do whatever's required to do the inner work, to take care of myself, while simultaneously letting go
mm,
and softening and opening and receiving. Because what we eventually realize as we develop and unfold our potential is we are not isolated, separate beings. We are one whole co-arising together. And you can feel into that and experience it as a tangible sense of life as a whole. And when you do that, we become a lot more humble and we start to figure out, boy, sometimes when I stop trying to figure everything out and instead deeply listen and observe with an open curiosity and some humility, the answers and the guidance arrive. So we move from um, being very head based and cognitive to more a balanced place where we balance intuition with a willingness to learn, with a receptivity, and admit to ourselves that it's okay not to know. In 2.0, it's all about knowing, right? It's the accumulating of knowledge and ideas, and this is who I am and control. In 3.0, which the transition tends to kick in our mid 30s, early 40s, we start to realize that actually I can't always know, and that's okay. I can
Mhm.
just do what I do. And then we kind of soften. And as we soften, we tend to get more real, more human. And then we soften into the emotional domains and our relational domains. And then if we do the work to clean that up, the pathways up, then we experience a whole nother level of joy and well-being. And it's just, then you're living life at a whole nother level. It's a
Mm.
developmental pathway. We pretty much always go through it. But if people aren't willing to give up control, they will never know 3.0. And that is where their potential is. So, the kind of framework I teach really starts with your mindset and a willingness to know what is true.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's amazing to wrap up. That's a good point to wrap it up as well. And yeah, it's something that is like a lifelong process, and people, that you're never like really fully there. It's a continuous process of
Always.
growing.
That's right.
um,
You got it.
but yeah, before I ask my last question, where can people learn more about you and your work, and where can they join the webinar?
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I just head to the school or biohacking.com. That's our website. And you can sign up for the webinar there. And if you're listening to this after it's gone live, it's on February the 21st, you'll be able to access the recording. And then you can get details of our other programs, including the biohacking instructor training program there as well.
Awesome. We'll put the links in the show notes. And my last question is, what's this one piece of advice or a habit that you wish you had adopted sooner?
hmm Um, I, if I had one piece of advice, it would be to really have allowed myself to experience more joy earlier in life and to strive less and to really enjoy other people's presence and company more
Mm,
and just be more appreciative of what's around me and who's around me rather than constantly striving for the next thing and bigger and better.
yeah, that's good. Good to know, because yeah, we're never, even if you're in perfect health, but you're alone, then you're probably not gonna be very happy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was great to talk with you, and super important topic. I hope, yeah, many people will resonate with this. So yeah, thank you for coming.
Been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Tim.
All right, that's it for this episode. Make sure you check out my new book, The Longevity Leap, on Amazon. I'd also appreciate if you share this episode with a friend or family member. Other than that, my name is Siim. Stay tuned for the next episode. Stay empowered.